So the article starts with the arrival of Sinterklaas. The Dutch figure based on St. Nicholas is celebrated with different festivities in the Netherlands. Starting in mid November, crowds of children and parents enthusiastically gather to greet the saint as he arrives in their city or village by steamboat. He lands with his helper, the so called Zwarte Piet, which is Black Pete in English, traditionally depicted as a character with dark skin. In Amsterdam alone,
His helper?
his helper. Sometimes he's called a servant, but in this article, they've chosen to go with helper.
It's voluntary, right?
It's not. In Amsterdam alone, hundreds of Pete's joined Sinterklaas on his boat or out in the streets handing out peppermint cookies, dancing, waving, and fooling around. They are everywhere until the eve of December 6th, approximately. So this has already occurred this year, and I like to check each year to make sure that it's still going on. And this year it went on, but this is something that happens much earlier than our Christmas, even though everyone celebrates Christmas around the same time. This is a special activity, which is, I guess, throughout mainland Europe, they have something special that happens near the beginning of the of like end November, beginning of December. We don't, because we have Thanksgiving, so that would just be too cramped. So we have Thanksgiving, that's what we do, and then other cultures have like a Christmas add-on. Now, here's the controversial blackfacing is the next segment of the article. For activities, for activists like Jerry Afrigi, November and December is the most difficult time of the year. That is because Zwarte Piet is usually played by white Dutch people who paint their face black, might wear afro or curly wigs, paint their lips plump, and often wore golden earrings in the past.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure, shoot.
Blackface. I'm actually, I don't know what the global standard is. I know it's a no for, and I know the reasons why in the US, but is that universal? Is that
it is
globally?
Well, first of all, US minstrel shows used to tour throughout Europe. So it's not like it's the US may have been the catalyst for such minstrel for that type of activity, but the rest of Europe definitely engaged and would go see these minstrel shows just the same. And as you see here, there are various traditions that have that same questionable aspect to them. And this happens to be one of them. So yes, if you were to say, oh, if I talk to a European, would they know what blackface is and would they think it is wrong? Usually, yes. Usually, historically, they would have some sense of it and say, yeah, I don't. As a white person, I'm not going to paint my face black and pretend to be a black person. It's sometimes it's not it's known. It's a universal known. I would say.
Good point of clarification.
Yeah, sure. So for Freehy, and I hope I'm saying his name correctly, this is a clear-cut black facing, a racist display of black people that should have long been abolished. Here's the other thing. If this person that we're talking about is Dutch. So even if you were to say in Europe, this is not necessarily known, black people in Europe seem to already know what blackface is, and it seems to be as offensive to them as it would be to a black person in America. So regardless of how a European may want to play this, black people around the world find blackface universally offensive. So there's that. There's
that part.
Yeah. Not only does it make black people the target of mockery, he also sees the tradition as a symbol of the Netherlands' colonial past and the lack of historical reappraisal of it. The controversy surrounding the Zwarte Piet character has been growing in the country for years, but for fans of the figure, the accusation of racism are misleading and a threat to one of the most important traditions from the Netherlands. And now,
other than you were conditioned from childhood to look at him as you're conditioned to have affinity for this magical figure.
Yes.
What about it is so necessary?
Well, hold on. This is I'm going to answer right now.
Perfect.
Zwarte Piet, and I love saying it. A supporter, Gilling, this was a guy that they've chose to interview who was on the opposite side, explicitly distances himself from mobs and being put into a political right corner. He's like one of the head people of the a Zwarte Piet fan club, if you will. Like they put on shows with Zwarte Piet, but he believes there shouldn't be a blackface debate in the first place. According to him, it's rather a misunderstanding. Black Pete is not based on black people. he claims, but rather derives from pagan folklore. Just like the German Krampus, which you highlighted earlier, a demon-like dark figure accompanying St. Nicholas, the Dutch Sinterklaas figure was originally accompanied by a dark creature that eventually took a human shape. The only thing remnant of that being the paint on the face that was coincidentally black. Due to these roots, Zwarte Piet cannot be racist, Gilling argues. There are prints with devil-like depictions of Krampus. Definitely, I agree. Historian Koning says, another person interviewed for this, but that doesn't change the fact that the present-day depiction of Zwarte Piet as the likeness of a black Moor from Spain started appearing in the 19th century, she adds. Culture doesn't develop in a vacuum, Koning says. Blackfacing as a stereotypical depiction of black people was not an isolated phenomenon of American minstrel shows, but was also very common in the Netherlands as a former colonial power.
So, I mean, it's interesting if you're going to say it's the devil, because I would be very curious to trace back roots of depictions of the devil and using colors to represent that, because that, I don't know what his background is, but yeah. I'm sure there is a whole academic discipline devoted to that. I'd be very curious to learn.
Well, I did,
because you have Christian Judeo values forming in like Egypt, and then even within Egypt, their adversaries were the Nubians, right? Yeah. I'd be very curious to see how these things formed.
I think he's being a little liberal. I don't think we should be so specific. I think he's just more playing on like a demonic figure. It's just some sort of adversarial figure to the light.
I mean, I can tell you what I saw in Eastern Europe in the mountains. Sure. I saw Santa Claus going through this beautiful Christmas market, was having a pretty fun time. And all of a sudden, about 15, 20 feet back from Santa, you hear this like clanging type thing, and there's this dude in blackface crawling on his hands and knees in chains.
Zwarte Pete,
which Santa was holding.
Yeah,
and trying to scare the kids and all that stuff. Not any kind of creature you would have affection towards. Is very much like a scary thing, but the way in which they were like, "What's scary? What could we put on here?" I mean, I don't know. You didn't even have to use your imagination. You just looked at it and you're like, oh my God, what are you guys doing? But there it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that would be Zwarte Piet's. That's a Zwarte Piet's. You saw one. You saw a parade of that. So welcome to mainland Europe.
Where I'm just looking for, if you're gonna say it's a demon or a devil, I've never seen one depicted that way. I've seen slaves depicted that way. I've never seen anyone else depicted that way. So, and I've seen depictions of, I don't know everything about the devil and demons and hell and all of that, but it's just, where is that depiction?